Hello everyone. If there was ever a moment that prompted a debate on race in the US, the Karmelo Anthony conviction is right up there. And sadly, it's the reaction to it by certain members of society that's also getting a lot of attention. It's pretty clear what happened that day. Teenager with a "I'm going to prove I'm the baddest motherfucker of all and I've got a knife to prove it" attitude is feeling all societally disaffected and randomly wandering around looking for trouble so as to vent his teenage rebellion to everything. That's what he had the knife for, to deal with trouble and to vent. Why else do you need such a weapon at an athletics meet? So let's freeze in time here for a moment in the minutes before the murder itself and look at all the behaviour of the parents since the murder. The lies, the grifting, the lack of any empathy for the idea that it was their son that murdered someone else's son, the race cards that they've attempted to play. The father Drew is as dumb as a bag of rocks racist idiot, and you know the truism, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. You can argue for sure that the killing itself wasn't racial, just random. Hypothetically, if Austin Metcalf was black and Karmelo had stabbed him, if approached in the same way, who knows? But if you look at the sum of how Karmelo appears to have been raised, to have no regard for white people, and hey, no disrespect to the memory of Austin Metcalf, but he does look like a bit of a Donny Osmond, right? So he had the perfect profile to be a target for someone that had a chip on their shoulder against white people. So let's not skip it. The killing itself, I don't care. Any 17-year-old of any mental state or condition should have a reasonable expectation that driving a knife into someone's heart will in all likelihood result in their death. I'd argue that on that basis alone, it's hard not to see a murder conviction as the only appropriate outcome. The witness testimony sealed it as to what really happened. Case closed. In the game of mummies and daddies, you get to play mummy for the next 35 at the Grey Bar Motel. But that's how it goes, man, when you stab someone in the chest. Then you have this supposed appeal. I don't see that working out somehow. In the last few days, there's been all this scrutiny regarding any money the parents might have received. Then you had this Dominique Alexander character that appears to be the brains of the grift. He just comes across as a wannabe Martin Luther King impersonator, somehow mistakenly believing himself to be some modern-day reincarnation. Everything to do with the case and the people involved in all of it exist inside that microcosm of actually being connected to it somehow, whilst the rest of us just watch it from the outside. The tragedy of it all is that Austin's been dead for well over a year now, so the first year he'll never get to live has already passed. Everyone's talking about it at the moment, so I'm not breaking any new ground there. But I can't help but look at some of the reaction videos that are around and think, man, this is really bad. So I'm sure you've all seen the video of the black guy outside the Karmelo trial, yelling out repeatedly, "The only good cracker is a dead cracker."
The only good cracker is a dead cracker. Only good cracker is a dead cracker. Only good cracker is a dead cracker.
That's the moment that you know that something's seriously out of whack. Imagine for a moment, and this could possibly be a difficult concept to come to terms with for any blacktivists out there of any race, yes, even the white apologists, the idea of witnessing that chant and wait for it, because it should be obvious, the other way around, where instead of some fat fucking ugly black lummox, it's some fat ugly fucking white lummox, yelling out repeatedly, "The only good ning is a dead ning." You see, I'm not allowed to say it, am I? That's the problem, isn't it? The black guy can stand there openly and publicly yelling out the most openly racist chant aimed at one particular race, and nothing seems to happen to him. For the time being, Karmelo is in prison. But check out this guy who isn't.
I'm so proud of y'all for killing that white boy. See, they not used to this shit happening to them, y'all. My only problem is it should happen more. This is where I'm fucking up. This is where I got a problem with my people. It should happen more. We should make a day like every Thursday or every Wednesday where we just wake up and fuck up a white girl or a white boy. Whatever. We should set up a day once a week where we just fuck them up, y'all, until they go back to the mountains.
Sadly, there's a number of these videos out there. I just think that fuck up a white person Thursday is an idea that suggests that you shouldn't be allowed near people whatsoever. And notice how under the current paradigm, if you criticise immigration policy, for example, you're committing hate speech, but apparently you won't be arrested for hate speech if you promote fuck up Whitey on Thursdays or maybe even Wednesday's day. Okay. I don't know. If you don't like white America, why don't you go and live amongst your brothers in black Africa? It seems so obvious. I mean, the solution to you having to be around white people. Go and be in a country that's majority black. Setting aside the absolute vacuum-headed, morally reprehensible claim to be proud of his black brother, Yol, for killing that white boy, you have to think further, where does he get his white hatred from? Well, he certainly doesn't get it from the historical knowledge of people like William Wilberforce, who dedicated his life to ending Britain's involvement in the slave trade, or the thousands of white soldiers who died in the civil war of his own country, cementing the Western principle of the abolition of slavery throughout the Western civilised world, of which he himself is a direct beneficiary of. And it doesn't come from his understanding that pretty much all people of all races lived in slave societies with slave economies throughout all of human history until recent times, and that black people aren't special in that regard. Of course, he doesn't get his understanding from his place in a multiracial world from those things. He gets it from the cultural myths he's been raised with, from whatever goes in his ears from those around him at a base level, devoid of any meaningful knowledge of world history, a product of the limitations of his proximity to others who also have a racial chip on their shoulders. And it's nothing like the chip I have on my shoulder. Many people commenting about the racial dynamics of this case, and who were showing videos of people like I've just shown, are making sure they're clear that they're not talking about all black people, just the racist ones. That's certainly true. But my personal view is that in the same way that there are easily identifiable genetic and hence physical differences between races, there are also not so easily identifiable genetically based psychological differences between the races, blended with cultural differences which the collective consciousness of blacks has yet to evolve out of in some ways, I'd argue. I'd argue that one of the great leaps forward for white Europeans was the invention of the printing press. It took knowledge and literacy out of the hands of only the elites and disseminated it to the masses. How could we have ever created eras like the Renaissance, the Enlightenment, the Age of Discovery, and phenomenon like representative government and modern sciences and philosophies if literacy had remained merely in the hands of kings and clergy? I think it's interesting that white Europeans aren't demanding reparations from the Muslims for the centuries of Islamic slave trading that took millions of white Eastern Europeans over the centuries. The reason we don't do it is because as a collective consciousness we've moved on. Our Western Christian value of all men are created equal in the eyes of God is so institutionally entrenched that we had to abolish slavery in order to rid ourselves of the hypocrisy it posed to what was supposed to be our Christian values. And I'm an atheist, so what am I supposed to care about Christian values? But I don't have to see values through a Christian lens, do I? I can see values through my own lens if I want. And I was raised by a white society in the 60s and 70s to believe that race didn't matter. When you see guys like I just showed, you see some percentage of the population weren't raised that way. They've been taught all through their lives that whitey is the oppressor. But we're the ones that ended slavery, and we did that around 150 years ago. Yes, it takes a few generations to filter through, but in so many ways you guys crossed the finish line from the civil rights movement onwards. It's at that point that you really became responsible for yourselves and the direction you'd allow your culture to proceed in. I'm sure blacks in general don't want to be referred to as a bunch of savages, but if you're going to get off on someone killing another human being because the victim was white, then you're pretty much the same sort of savage as Karmelo Anthony is. When you stab someone in the heart, that's all that is, an act of animalistic savagery. I can't help but notice when I watch some of these US court videos that in a bench room with 13 guys in orange waiting their turn, 9 of them are black. But hang on, you're 13% of the population. I don't want to say any more about the basic math part of that observation, but I do think this. It's easy for whites like myself to watch the Karmelo case, watch some of these reaction videos, and legitimately critique how openly racist some people are being because it's directed toward our race specifically. But I think that in the same way that historically it took members of the white race culture telling itself from within to remove race from the equation when it came to human rights, in the now time, it really takes some loud voices from sensible blacks to speak out against the racist idiocy coming from some of their own race the most, as hearing the truth from their own people would hopefully have the greatest impact on them. And I've seen some of that around, YouTube videos of blacks with black fatigue, and not really because they have black fatigue. They just want to be honest about what they're witnessing regarding the racial debate the Karmelo case has created. Another thing that I did find bizarre about the Karmelo case was that there appeared to be some tribal black component to Austin Metcalf's father being turned away from a gathering for Karmelo. I find it hard to get my head around the idea that whether by the parents' choice or upon advisement, the father of the victim wouldn't be welcome. If my child had murdered someone else's child, even though the parents would be the last people I'd ever want to have to speak to, they'd be the first people I'd want to have to speak to under those circumstances. It's beyond the pale of human decency that he was turned away in my book. Anyway, I think that's about covered what I want to say for the moment about it. Just before I go, thanks to my ongoing channel supporters Paul Packer, Liz Bonaro and Cade Ryan for throwing in a little bit monthly to support the channel. I really appreciate it. I've got original music for download if you join my Patreon, and there's awesome t-shirts etc. in my Teespring store. For Gary Awesome Uncensored, you go to my Rumble channel and follow me there. Hundreds more videos than on YouTube. Links are below for all that stuff. Please hit like and subscribe and leave a comment. Let me know what you think of the Karmelo case. Thanks for watching.